Yeah, so I titled my talk Recoding Our Workflows to FOSS4G, but it's essentially more about my journey becoming a GIS developer. I was a geologist and have since retrained in GIS and dabbled in a bit of Python. So my talk's pretty much about that journey. Okay, so back in 2011, I started my career as a geologist working in the middle of nowhere in WA, chasing around drill rigs and collecting data using everything to store and analyze the data. Files were saved locally on people's machines, some working in the Perth office, some at site. There was data stored in paper files all over the place. This made for a very grumpy database administrator, although despite him being so grumpy, I was somewhat jealous, as it meant he was able to work from anywhere, not having to be here. He could work in the office, at home, anywhere. So after 8 years of working FIFO as a geologist and looking on in envy of the GIS and database teams, able to enjoy their weekends and go home after work rather than be back to a donga, I decided I just needed to learn some skills that would allow me to work from anywhere and not have to deal with this anymore. Yeah, it wasn't particularly fun. That sort of pushed me over the edge. And so one day a colleague of mine mentioned he was doing some coding and that I should learn Python, whatever that was. He'd built some tools to help us automate some workflows, and I could see the value in his skill set, so I thought I'd give it a try. After many failed attempts to sit down and go through a video tutorial and constantly getting pulled away from it because of other work priorities, COVID hit and it meant we weren't able to do any field work, so I was able to sit down and take the time to learn. Oh, geez, I've zoomed in a lot. So basically I was able to sit down and take the time to learn a new skill. And so I decided on a course called Automate the Boring Stuff, which kept coming up as one of the recommended courses for people starting out learning Python. And the name appealed to me as I'd spent a lot of time doing the boring stuff in my previous jobs. During this course, there was basically a point where I realized, you can basically do anything you can essentially automate anything you can do on a computer. So that kind of appealed to me. I was pretty excited about that. And so as well as learning Python, I also pivoted my skills to start learning GIS and took up an internship with Eagle Technology. They are the Esri provider for New Zealand. So this was an interesting change to my work. As I previously mentioned, I'd gone from using anything and everything to do one job to now using one piece of software to try and do every job, as I'm sure you know with Esri. At Eagle was where I learned that I could combine Python and GIS. And and after a year of working there, I was contacted by Kenex, which was basically a job that combined all my previous experience. So we're a company that does geology and GIS. And so at Kenex, my job was to work on internal improvement projects in the company to help streamline our processes and procedures. My first project was to automate a process we do to check for free ground that comes available for exploration across Australia, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. And so this process basically involved manually going to each of all the 7 state governments. Sorry, Canberra doesn't count in this case. And basically collect all the spatial, download their tenement data. And all of this data is in very different formats with different schema, and so then we needed to standardize this into one easy-to-use file that we can then compare against each other and check for any areas that have come available that we could potentially pick up for exploration. So this is the perfect problem for what I'd previously learned, and my mind went straight back to the Python course where I'd used the library Selenium to control the browser and download data. With my experience, this meant a lot of repeated lines of code, so it wasn't particularly best practice, but that's what I knew. And so, there's a lot of, quite poor repeated code, which don't judge me too much. This is what I first learned. And then I've since tried to recode this process and basically taking out all the ArcPy functions and recode them to an open source version of a similar tool, which was drastically helped by a new colleague we hired in 2022. Fortunately, had quite low wages of $20 a month. Has helped me a lot. It's ChatGPT. Probably one of my favourite colleagues. This video plays for far too long. It's basically just getting it to help me write a tool that merges all the shapefiles. Anyway, I'm sure you guys have all used ChatGPT. Whether you admit it or not, I suppose. So another example of a small project I worked on was creating a custom plugin for QGIS to extract all data within a polygon. So this would run SQL procedures in the background that Lisa made, that Lisa's written, and would check the extents of the polygon and extract all the spatial data within it, as well as checking a specific ID of the spatial data to extract any non-spatial, associated non-spatial data, saving us having to manually run join tools or annoy Elisa to run the database procedures. So it saved us quite a bit of time. And also just had a little bit of fun adding the Kenex logo. Just trying to promote, like, one day it might become a useful tool for public use, so get our branding on it. Next slide. And then the next project stemmed from a larger data compilation project Kenex had, which involved a lot of manual data entry of old geological data. Basically, the idea of this project stemmed from me listening out in the office, and I heard someone just doing the same thing over and over again, and I was like, hang on, this surely can be automated, whatever they're doing. Anyway, so this is basically a small TK Inter app just built in Python. And yeah, so basically we collect a whole lot of handwritten tables, which is pretty time consuming. And so I had to play around with various computer vision tools like OpenCV, OCR readers, but unfortunately didn't have much luck with them, and eventually ended up using the AWS tool called TextStract, combined with other Python tools to build a custom TK Inter app that can read PDFs and extract tables into Excel with some pretty incredible results. So it turned this into this. And if we highlight a little bit more, we can read this. So that's that section on the left, says mineralization, pyrite only, tending to be concentrated in the base of sandier units, which is quite hard to read even for, a geologist. They're pretty technical terms, but it managed to read it and structure it really well. It turned it into this, so I thought it was pretty incredible. Obviously, AWS is an open source tool, so if anyone here has any open source tools that could potentially do a similar thing, we'd be open to hear it, because we're getting a build from AWS every time we use this at the moment. But no, it's a pretty incredible tool, and it's saved a hell of a lot of time. Next slide. So basically this brings me to my larger project that I'm working on, which is MPM, which is mineral potential mapping. So mineral potential mapping is one of Kenex's core services, and it models geological data to quantify the potential that an area has, that an area may host a mineral deposit. So the process involves collating and cleaning all available data across a study area, processing and extracting the important parts of the data, and running several different modelling tools and verifying the outputs. It's essentially a process that models all available data to provide target areas for explorers to test and hopefully find some gold or whatever the commodity of interest is at the time. Basically, I don't understand the technical details of this process. There's more experienced geologists at Kenex that do. I just see it as a fancy Venn diagram where favourable overlaps favourable means more favourable. It's easy. That's the way I understand it in my head. And I'm trying to essentially automate and streamline this process. So currently this process is done using a combination of Word documents, Excel, ArcGIS with custom toolboxes, and even we're still using MapInfo. So the process starts, as all well-intended processes start in a company, with a Word document detailing each step down to which button to push. which software to use, all that. We've got, I think this is only a subset of the Word documents we use, but yeah, that's the start of the process. You open a Word document and follow some instructions. You also need to track what data that has been used in the process, different iterations of the model and results, and variables in the model. And so as well as the all-important naming conventions of fields and files, which is very important because we've only got the character limit from shapefiles of 10, so we have to come up with some pretty creative naming conventions, and you want to avoid where you can _final, _test2, etc. And all of this is tracked in a separate Excel spreadsheet. And then we move to ArcGIS. So some of the processes are still running using custom ArcGIS tools that were coded quite a long time ago by someone you might recognise, as far as back as 2013. I think you can hopefully read that. It's a while ago, so it's a bit of a worry. And it's also been a challenge to recode into open source, as some of the functionality in the code has become obsolete or incompatible with newer versions of ArcGIS Pro, not to mention sometimes having to decipher the odd Italian comments in the code. Yeah, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but obviously using ArcGIS comes at a cost as well. So if it can be moved to QGIS, even better. And so Kenex has actually been around for quite a while, and it shows as we still have one legacy tool in MapInfo. And you can see by the size of our owner's screen and how much of the desk it takes up. I think it's Colin in the room. I think he used to work with Greg as well. That was probably close to when he worked with him. So basically we have this legacy tool in MapInfo which processes some of our fault data. I haven't yet been able to recreate it easily in any other software, so I was on the lookout for people who might be able to help me with this project, which brings me to how I'm going to develop the new process for this. And so after attending FOSS4G in Auckland last year, I met all of you wonderful people, and discovering all the capabilities of open source software, I went back with a newfound enthusiasm for the project. This is also where I met Emma and Niall from North Road, and learned that Niall is a core developer of QGIS. I thought he might be the perfect person to help with this project. So soon after getting back from Auckland, I fired off an email and had a few meetings to discuss recreating the MapInfo tool as a starting point, which Niall made. He made it sound like it would be something he'd love to do and sound like it'd be quite easy from his experience. Except, unfortunately, the one thing that wasn't so easy was getting funding for the project. So, sorry, Niall and Emma. I'm still harassing management every month to see where the budget's at, but we'll get there eventually. It's definitely still happening at some point. I'm not sure if Niall and Emma are here, but yes. Yeah, we'll get there eventually. Hopefully we're not at FOSS4G in Auckland with the same presentation.
If we have 20 push-ups.
I should probably do them now, considering I talked about it though. And so other collaborators on this project, GTK, so they're the Finnish Geological Survey. In February this year, I was lucky enough, or potentially unlucky enough in February, to go to Finland. I attended a seminar where we were discussing various projects that Kenex and GTK are collaborating on, and by coincidence I got talking to someone who was developing two QGIS plugins for a similar process. One is called the EIS plugin, and the other was a weights of evidence plugin, both of which include parts of our workflow. So basically this was a massive step forward in the process, as they'd done a large portion of the work already with these, and I'll now only have to add the tool North Road will hopefully eventually be developing for us, and extend slightly on other processes and make them a little bit more specific to Kenex. But yeah, these plugins that they've developed it's essentially a similar process to what we do. So it was very beneficial. It saved me a hell of a lot of thinking and time. So basically the end goal is to remove the need to jump from Word to Excel, ArcGIS and MapInfo, and then with the help of North Road and GTK and using Python and QGIS and other open source software, we'll be able to guide the user through a nice streamlined process, ultimately finding some gold, hopefully. That's what comes up when you type in Google finding gold. So there's a bit of a discussion with Elisa whether I should include that or not, but here we are. Yeah, and so that's my projects that I've worked on and will be working on in the future. If you want to know more about it, come and have a chat, and I'll be keen to chat with a few of you in the room because I'm sure a lot of you can help me with some of the stuff because I'm still learning a lot about. I'm officially a GIS developer now, but tide's still out, I think. So, yeah, cheers, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Does anyone have any questions for Phil?
I hope not.
Here's one.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you. What options do you have, or what plans do you have now that you're convinced using a stack of open source tools to convince your management of granting funding?
I don't need to convince them. It's just there's other priorities, so they're just at the bottom of the list at the moment. So I just need to do the work and get it to the top of the list again. So I think they're very convinced. They're already very keen to do it, but it's just, I think, yeah, we've just got to manage our priorities, which is common at Kenex. We've got lots of cool, exciting ideas that we're working on, but sometimes other things take priority. And yeah, obviously it's an internal development project, so when paid work comes in, it gets pushed to the bottom, which is part of the stuff that I was brought on to try and avoid being drawn into the paid work. But as running a company goes, you kind of always get drawn into things. But yeah, so basically I just need to finish my other projects so then we can move on to this one, which will then be funded. So, yeah.
We can probably squeeze in one last question if anyone has one. Here's one.
Thank you. Yeah, so if getting management to commit funding to do a development project is the problem, have you thought about like doing crowdfunding where you get together with other companies and each contributes a smaller amount, but we all get the same result?
So that's kind of what GTK are doing. So their EIS project, it's quite, we're kind of involved but kind of not. They have lots of funding. They've got like EU funding. So they're developing stuff that is completely open source that we'll be using, but also the challenge with the mineral potential mapping process is that there's only a select few people that do it, and all those select few people have different opinions on the way they do it. And so we're trying to do it the Kenex specific way. So the more people you involve, the more opinions you have to manage. And if people know Greg in the room, I don't know if they do, but anyway. Yeah, yeah, we have our way of doing things. So it's great that we are working with GTK and they are developing this tool that we can then build on top of. But yeah, I don't think it's too much of a problem. I'd say maybe, like the funding probably isn't the issue. It's more, I guess, resourcing capacity, like time. Essentially, it's myself at the moment with help from a few other people. So I've had other things take over my time. So, yeah.
Another option here is that if you ever, and this is more of a comment rather than a question, if you ever have faced this issue, is that one of the things that we do is that we mentor. And so essentially instead of getting us to develop it or maybe another developer to get it, we'll actually go into, say, we'll do 10 mentoring sessions, and so you pay for that, and that actually ends up being a little bit cheaper and also upskills you as well. So that is another way of working out how to get this developed that might sound better, and you might be able to justify the spend a little bit better with all your managers and executives.
Yeah, that was another potential avenue because I met you guys last year and I was like, yeah. So as you said, it will upskill me as well, so that would be beneficial as well. So, yeah. that's another good
Okay.
option.
Let's hear it for Phil.
Yes, thank you.